So I think, you always get hit with some stats. And so there's just one set of stats that I really want you to focus on. It's on the right side of your screen. But what we're doing is, as we listen to our customers, we're hearing a consistent message about they want a more scalable experience. They want to operationalize costs, and they really want to reduce the level of effort around security. So the message from customers is, reduce the operational burden from me to manage security, because I don't necessarily want to be in the infrastructure or I don't want to manage infrastructure security. And so we're hearing that from our customers, and we're also understanding that customers are going through, especially in certain verticals, we're going through really the heart of IT transformation and moving into cloud. So IT organizationally is being refactored. Applications are moving from data centers into hybrid environments, right? So how do we provide security across an environment that encompasses the AWS cloud, other clouds, a data center, and remote locations? Again, that's also flexible, very easy to consume and consistently consumed. And then as those applications move into cloud, how do we do that? How do we facilitate the migration in the easiest way possible? And so this idea of cloud nativeness is very important, especially from a third-party provider, an ISV partner like Fortinet, right? So customers typically are, they're contending with, I need the service to be as cloud native as possible, and typically that's a first-party service, right? Something that you consume directly from AWS. Or you might have to choose, well, I really need depth of feature. And pure-play providers and ISV partners do a really good job at that. But there's a natural tension there. And so what we want to do is provide the ability to resolve that tension so that they can both have the best set of features for themselves and also be able to consume in the most cloud-native way, right? So what does cloud-native really mean? It means services that are easy to consume, fast to provision, and a quality experience not just for the end user, but also for the administrative staff that has to manage that infrastructure. Now, their customers are also contending with or realizing that networks are very different in a cloud environment. They're flat. There's no really layer 2 network exposed to them, right? It's all routed constructs for the most part. That's changing a little bit with the the availability of gateway load balancer and some other services. But the real challenge is they have multiple ingress, and you all have multiple ingress and egress points. And so different VPCs are attached to different NAT gateways and internet gateways, and all of those have to be protected. So then you have to consider, okay, I have all of these accounts, and I have to scale security across all of these accounts within a single region, and that gets complex, right? So customers are saying, that's a challenge, and how do I unburden myself from that challenge? And then you have all of these different lines of businesses that can deploy services in any region potentially at any time, very ephemeral, right? And so now we have to manage infrastructure sprawl and then make sure that security is consistent across that footprint. And it's a very dynamic environment. And then once I get past day 1 provisioning and I'm into day 2 workflows, right? Delivering and maintaining the security posture day to day, I have the network operational overhead that I have to deal with, configuring policy, moves, adds, changes, and so forth. And so how can I get time back and move to higher value activities for my security operators? So these are challenges, and this is why security in cloud is a little different. So what we're looking to do as organizations is increase our agility to make the time to remediate and respond for the security practice much faster, less focused on infrastructure, and more on the ability to be effective in our security practice. We want to reduce risk, right? Consistency of policy. That's just not in cloud, but that's everywhere your security estate exists. And then we also want to drive down costs. Stranded costs are a big problem, a big concern for organizations that tell us, look, licensing models don't really work out for me from vendors that, where I have to sink a lot of money into a perpetual license, and maybe I don't get the full value of that, or that license is locked into a particular location or a particular use case. I need some flexibility. And so this is where we've introduced what we're very well known for, and we've started to deliver this as a service. If you know Fortinet, and I hope you do, In security, we have delivered more units shipped of our next generation firewall, the FortiGate. It really is a gold standard in network security, and now we're making that available as a SaaS. So that's kind of the big announcement from Fortinet. And by delivering this as a SaaS, we can solve for a lot of those problems that I just mentioned. We can provide that best-in-class network security functionality in a much more cloud-native way. As a SaaS service, you don't have to worry about the operational overhead. We simplify your operations. We're using built-in AWS constructs to provide unlimited scalability for all intents and purposes, right? By tying into gateway load balancer and using auto-scaling on our side, things that we manage, software revisions that you don't have to manage, all the benefits of SaaS. So really you can just focus on managing policy. And then we can also turn that into an operational expense so you're not stranded with those investments. And how does it work? So let's talk a little bit about that. So again, the focus for you as a customer in an organization is on your workloads, right? You can focus on your applications. So what exists in the customer account are your instances, your applications, your VPCs. What we do is we manage everything else in our account, and we insert a gateway load balancer endpoint. Simply point your traffic to us, and we'll route it. Now, on the management plane and the data plane, we set that up so that for you as a customer, you have a dedicated inspection cluster that's dedicated to in the region. And for you, this is a dedicated instance. It's not shared with other customers, so you have customer segmentation. And on the management plane side, we've built a very cloud-native experience so you can simply manage policy. And there are multiple ways to manage that, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. The use cases that we focus on are really all of the routing use cases that you would expect. So inbound security, I think outbound security, which outbound security is underappreciated, I think, in the cloud experience. A lot of inbound protection, a lot of focus on inbound protection, but what we see is a proliferation of botnet command and control services. Those things really become a large risk for organizations for outbound internet access. And then, of course, the segmentation. So we can deliver segmentation between VPCs. We can tie into your transit gateways. And then we can provide really best practices around how you segment your applications in a scaled-out environment. Now, the cloud-native firewall looks like this in maybe a dedicated region. So we can support multiple customers. Each of these customers can interact with their data center environments, remote edge environments. We can onboard that traffic into either directly into the transit gateway or into some other VPN gateway. And then each customer is segmented, so you have your own data plane service dedicated to you. Now, one of the great things is that we're providing all of the deep packet inspection, the IPS controls, the content filtering, and then we're doing that all based on the metadata that's available in that environment. So as your application developers deliver workloads and those come online, the service will see those workloads come online, and then we will pick those up automatically by a policy framework that you've described. So what we're doing is removing the day-to-day workflows there. So you don't have to go and modify a policy every time that a new workload is deployed. Now, all of the inspection services are informed by our global threat intelligence service, FortiGuard. FortiGuard Threat Intelligence provides updates for your IPS engine, for antivirus, and so forth. And so we're taking all of the information that we get from about, I forgot what the number is, but it's well north of like 20 billion daily events and threats, and distilling that into usable threat intelligence for your services. Now, some of the integrations are really important. I mentioned gateway load balancer. So I think of that hybrid cloud environment where you're transitioning applications into the cloud, right? You don't have to worry about IP renumbering. You don't have to worry about changing your public interfaces, those elastic IPs. The gateway load balancer allows us to insert transparently into your network. So there's no impact to existing workloads. It makes it a lot easier to onboard new workloads when you don't have to worry about the additional routing requirements of security, which is usually a pretty big headache. There are multiple ways to manage your inspection services. And that's where a lot of the flexibility comes in. So if you are an AWS Network Firewall Manager user, you can actually manage policy through that construct, right? So using AWS's service to manage our firewall solution. If you're a Fortinet customer and you have hardware in the premise, you have other infrastructure as service that you want to manage, all of it can be managed from the same policy through the FortiManager single pane of glass. So think about being able to manage SaaS, deploying policy on SaaS and IaaS in hardware from the same policy set. What we're doing is getting rid of the variability across these different enclaves and giving you consistent security across your entire estate. It's also available and purchased and consumed through the AWS Marketplace. So we're integrated to Marketplace, you subscribe, and you point your traffic at the service. It's really simple. The management console, if you choose to use the dedicated management console, if you don't want to use the FortiManager, if you don't want to use AWS Network Firewall Manager, we have a dedicated console that gives you all of the functionality and visibility that you would expect from a Fortinet or a FortiGate solution. Now, one of the key points that's listed here is that we can manage multiple accounts. So when you look at how this service scales, this is where it's really unique. So one cluster can manage your entire organization within a region. So it's redundant across the availability zones. It supports multiple accounts, so you don't have to worry about every time somebody has a new subscription, a new account, do I have to deploy a firewall cluster for that account? It's global, it's regionally scalable. That's a big, big deal. The dynamic object capabilities allow us to create those policy frameworks where I can say, if this particular workload has this key value pair tagged on it, if it has intellectual property information, if it has personal or PII data, and I don't want it to talk to external communities or mobile users, something like that, I can define that as a framework. And if the application doesn't meet the requirements of the policy, it doesn't pass, right? Nobody has to go in and open up a port, put in an IP address. Very simple workflows. And you can do all that policy management from here. That's all you think. That's the only thing that you're working on. So again, the concept here is like you don't have to spend time managing the infrastructure. You minimize the time managing policy, and the security operator is focused on higher value activities. We give you time back. The simplified operations, again, so I mentioned that it auto scales and is tied in with the gateway load balancer. We focus on really two things, allowing you to manage the policy and deploying your applications or the objects. And those objects are defined dynamically. This ties back into, if you're a Fortinet customer, the subscription ties you back into our FortiCare services, so the service is automatically registered. And again, no matter how many VPCs you have, how many accounts that you have, in what availability zones you happen to be, it's going to scale for you. So the consumption piece of it, and this is very important. This is actually going to lead into the next piece that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But this is how the service is priced. So for a cluster that's deployed in a region, there is the cost that for running that cluster, right? A base cost for running the cluster. And then based on the security profiles that you apply and the volume of data, that's how we bill this. So you're only paying for what you consume. If you need more bandwidth, you don't have to worry about, hey, do I have to resize my cluster? You just fire the bandwidth at it. We scale it, and then you're billed based on the bandwidth. So the consumption is very easy. One of the things that we do in proof of concepts and free trials is that we allow you to test an application. A lot of customers don't know what kind of demand to expect when they first launch an application. There's an opportunity to test that out and then baseline your application so you will get some predictable costs. We also have cost calculators that will help you figure all of this out. Now, the hybrid security scenario is a very big deal for enterprises. One of the things that I continue to talk about is the consistency of the security policy across your entire estate. So we have this idea of the hybrid mesh firewall at Fortinet. So this is our FortiGate and FortiOS operating system being deployable no matter where you happen to need security. So whether it's in the data center, whether it's hardware or virtualized or a SaaS, you're going to get the same experience, the same policy management across all of those different constructs and locations. And so that allows for ultimate scalability. You don't have to worry about retraining people based on different types of deployments. It's very, very consistent. Huge point there. If you know Fortinet, then you will know us, again, as a premium brand in network security and firewalling. Gartner recognizes us time and time again as a market leader. So the dots are pretty small, but we're in the top right corner, and otherwise I wouldn't have shown you this. But just if you didn't know Fortinet, take a look at what Gartner says about us. This is from customer feedback, these magic quadrants, and so we've got a good reputation. So what are my takeaways for FortiGate CNF? Strengthen security posture. This is a consistent security posture with the same types of features and capabilities across your entire IT environment, right? The ability to see and have visibility of all of those objects no matter where they exist. So you can apply policy for cloud from your data center, right? So I can drive policy closer to where the traffic originates. I'm more effective with my bandwidth. I provide a better, lower latency, more optimized experience for my user. I can do the types of inspections that you expect from a quality next generation firewall. Deep packet inspection. We can handle threats both for ingress, egress, and again for east-west segmentation requirements in all these environments. And it's very integrated into AWS's services. Now, the hybrid cloud environment allows for flexible consumption. I want to talk some more about flexible consumption in a minute, because the idea of being able to deploy services and consume on demand in the cloud is important, but what if you could do that in other environments? Let me talk about that in a second. But the big deal is that you get out of the you get out of the network infrastructure management business. Our customers consistently tell us they don't want to manage security infrastructure. They would rather consume that as a security service, as long as the features are there. So getting the features and the quality of security, maintaining that consistent security posture across your entire environment, and doing that without the operational overhead is a big deal. And so let me transition in my theme of flexibility and consumption. So customers are challenged with these things. They're challenged with being able to size the requirements effectively. When they come to a vendor and they say, hey, I need to buy licensing for a particular use case, sometimes they overbuy, sometimes they underbuy. That's a challenge. One of the great things that marketplaces and cloud and AWS Marketplace has shown us is that we can consume just what we need. We can operationalize expenses. That's very, very effective. It's really changed the paradigm in terms of how services are procured. And then the cost predictability, right? If I don't know how much I need, then it's very hard to predict what my costs will be. And the capital outlay, did I overspend? Did I underspend? That's a big problem, right? Forecasting that. The time between procurement and consumption has been a big problem. So a customer will say, hey, you know what? I need to procure, but it takes too long to get the licensing in place. It takes too long to deliver the product. And so we have to solve for that. We have to allow people to move more quickly and be more agile. And then there are commitments that you all are making and customers are making in cloud to cloud providers, right? And so there's some opportunity to say, hey, let's leverage that investment that you've made in AWS and use that to on other third-party investments that you need to make as well to consolidate your spending. And so Fortinet has launched a number of ways of consuming, but what we're talking about right now and this week is our FortiFlex offering. FortiFlex is a way to extend that marketplace experience to not just cloud services, but to even hardware services. So imagine buying services for hardware that you can consume on demand. And by the way, if I decide no longer to use that piece of hardware in the data center or that virtual machine in the data center and I need to move that to cloud, as I move workloads into cloud, I can then shift that spend because it's consumption based. So simply what's happening is you apply a token to a service, to a device, and that token says, okay, it registers with our FortiCare services, and it says, all right, this is the security profile that you're using, this is the type of services that you have, this is the type of support you need on this particular deployment, and it bills as you use it, right? And then when you stop using that device, you can shift that spend to somewhere else, or you minimize that spend. Think about this scenario. All right, there's two scenarios to think about, actually. The first is, let's say I need to deploy a high available cluster, an active passive, right? Cluster for redundancy, right? Of firewalls. Well, typically I'm paying for both of those, even though one I don't use, right? Well, the kind of secret is, I don't even know if I should be mentioning this, but is that you don't necessarily have to spend the same amount on both of those. If one's being idle, then I can minimize my spend on my idle backup device, and I can apply services to the one that's active. So I've optimized what is very costly, redundant deployment into something that's far more cost effective. Does that make sense? Okay. The second scenario is, as you're migrating to cloud, right, you've got services that are deployed in the data center or in a colo, wherever it is, or you're shifting from one cloud to another. Now I can take that spend and I can shift it with my workloads. So that is the other primary use case to think about. So as I shift those services, I activate a new cluster or device in cloud, and then it just starts to build based on what I use, right? Very, very simple. Now we have other ways to consume, right? So ultimate flexibility. If you like the traditional licensing model of bring your own license, where you procure that through a distributor, that works as well. Marketplace, we have about 60 listings on Marketplace for various services that we offer, and you can consume those as you go traditionally through the Marketplace. And what customers are typically doing if they consume through Marketplace directly is consuming via private offer. Now, these can actually be combined. So we now work through private offers. So if you have a particular level of commitment that you're interested in at a discount and so forth, then FortiFlex can actually be purchased through Marketplace. So you get the best of both worlds, actually. Now, it's a point-based system, so the spend actually converts to some number of points that are consumed, and those points are leveled against the types of services that you have, right? And you can implement cost controls. So within our portal, we have the ability to view the consumption and reporting of all that in real time. And so as you use those services, you can see which devices, which essentially users and communities are using different levels of points against your FortiFlex allocation. I mentioned the scalability. So as you scale in, so think of like an example where you have a scaled out cluster, you're auto scaling a service, right? That can auto scale, that spend auto scales as well. So you're only spending what you need in that flexible, and it flexes in real time. There is an API, so all of this can be API driven. So if you are deploying with Terraform or CloudFormation, using FortiFlex, you can bootstrap with that licensing type, so there's no delay in the provisioning. You apply the security profile, and it just bills. And it's completely agnostic, so whether you're using it in cloud or you're using it somewhere else, FortiFlex is globally available wherever that service may run. Now, there are a lot of different products included in the FortiFlex program today. We're continually expanding that. Of course, the FortiGate virtual machine is definitely included there. Our management platform, our security management center, which includes the FortiManager and the FortiAnalyzer, are available. Our web application firewall and API protection services are available. FortiPortal is more of a MSSP offering, so if you have a large number of customers that are multi-tenanted potentially, or you want to provide a branded experience for your customers if you're a managed provider, FortiPortal provides that. And the FortiGuard services and support, that apply to any of your hardware deployments or virtual deployments all can be consumed off of FortiFlex. So the idea of being able to do really hardware as a service is, I think, really unique so far. I haven't seen anybody else do this. I mentioned the calculator, so if you go to this URL, we have a calculator to give you a feel for what the point consumption will be based on the different scenarios of CPU, the numbers of CPU that you apply and the security profile that you apply. Okay, and all of this is billed. We've really changed the billing in real time. So we look at that daily, what your daily policy profiles look like on those devices, and we adjust the billing in near real time. So I mentioned private offers, I mentioned pay-as-you-go, but in summary, we give you many ways to consume our services. We want our consumption models to be as well aligned with AWS marketplace experiences as we possibly can make them. We want to help you use the spends that you've committed to AWS in the best way that benefit your business. And we want to provide you the most customized consumption experience possible. So my theme today has really been about flexibility in how you consume security. So whether it's consuming SaaS or infrastructure or even hardware services, we can provide the most flexible service, and you can spend those or tie those into commitments that you have through Marketplace already. So I really appreciate you guys spending a few minutes with me and a little bit of time in this lightning session talking about what we're announcing this week. So thank you very much.